Nick is a plane. We're talking about games you can travel with. These ones can fit into a bag. I think Nick's still settling into the new year is what it is.
That was a bad cold open.
All right. You know, we are talking about travel games, everybody. So these are going to be games that we often like to bring with us on our travels, whether it be to board game stuff or just with family or whatever. Yeah. So the kind of prerequisites for this are going to be games that are packable, so not super huge, and ideally take up a small footprint as well, small-ish footprint
Basically,
as well.
like games you could play on like a small table if you're like a pub, maybe even like a tray at like on a plane or something like that.
Yeah,
I was playing earlier, you saw. But yeah, something that has small-ish at least footprint, and then easy to put into a backpack, a duffel bag,
take
or a
with you
like that.
on the road.
These are top 10 travel games. Number 10 is going to be Draftosaurus. Draftosaurus is a really great drafting game where you're drafting dinosaurs and allosauruses and stuff like that. Tyrannosaurus. So basically what you do is you have your own little park. You're drafting dinosaurs for a dinosaur theme park. And basically you'll be having a handful of various dinos. You will choose one, put it somewhere in your park, and then pass the rest of the dinos to a person on your left. Then you'll get some as well, choose one, put in your park, and kind of keep going around until you've drafted all the dinos that you can. So on your board, there are a bunch of different places you can put your dinosaurs, and that's mostly going to be determined by a dice roll. A die is going to be rolled, and that'll basically determine kind of like what area of your board you can place a dinosaur in, and then each different pen is going to have different scoring ones. One of the pen wants all the same dinosaur, one wants all different ones, that kind of stuff. One wants a little couple ones, so a bunch of little pairs of dinosaurs because they're being cute because they're couples. That kind of stuff. It's a very, very simple game, but what's really, really nice about it and what makes it a great travel game is like your board is about this big, and then all the other meeples are in your hands. They go in your hand, you place one onto your board, pass them. You can play this in a very small, compact area. You can even play it on something like a plane, something with a nice flat surface. It's not going to jostle around too much. You wouldn't want to play it in your lap or something. But nonetheless, it's very, very travel sized because it actually has a very small footprint because the meeples are either in your hand or on your board, and that's it. There's no cards. There's nothing else in the game. It's really, really great.
Number 9 is Point City. This is a engine building game, follow-up to Point Salad, which is a set collection game. And it has some kind of Splendor DNA as well, where you are going to be drafting these cards that are double-sided. On one side, it shows a type of building that will be in your city if you build it, and the other side is going to show a resource or resources. And you're going to be drafting cards from this grid of cards, gaining resources, and then hopefully spending resources to build buildings out into your tableau, your city. And this will typically start to produce permanent resources. You might always have a little bit of extra money that can be used toward future purchases. And the game kind of ramps up that way. There are also certain buildings that are just going to be worth points at the end of the game, especially those kind of higher level buildings as you progress through the game. There are these kind of municipal buildings you can get, which give you tokens, which might give you, set collection kind of elements for the permanent resources that you end up building into your city. I just really like the cadence of like pulling these cards, the double-sided nature of them. So you can be at times drafting resources, at times building these buildings. And then as you build up, it becomes kind of quicker and quicker and easier to build the higher level stuff. So it has a really nice ramp up without taking up too much room.
Number 8 is going to be a game called Avant Carde. This ultimately has a relatively small footprint, but it's also really, really nice because this game is super, super easy to set up because the way the box is made is it kind of rolls up into a spiral, and each part of the spiral has a deck of cards in it. And so when you want to set up a game, all you have to do is unroll the spiral, which is like the box of cards, and you're set up. That's literally all you need. It's incredible how well this works. So it's super, super easy to set up. Everyone is going to have a small deck of cards, which are going to have numbers on them, 2 through, I think, like 13 or something like that. Somewhere in there. But you'll have a kind of a big gap in the middle where you don't have any numbers. And you're basically, during the game, you're trying to play out as many cards as you can on a turn. When you're playing cards, you can either play, when you're playing cards down, you have to either match the color of the previous card or the number of the previous card. So if I play like a purple 2, next I can either play another 2 or another purple card. So I could go 2, purple 8, and then an orange 8, and then an orange something else. You're basically trying to match those and play out as many cards as you can. The more cards you play, you'll get more trophies, and trophies are going to be your points. But one good thing is depending on how many cards you play, you're also going to get money that's going to let you buy new cards, those kind of cards in the middle, which are like, like 4 through like 9 or 10. And all of those cards are going to have special abilities. So when you play them down, you'll get to do something. Sometimes you get to move stuff, trash stuff, do all sorts of different things. It's really, really fun. But ultimately, it's not a big table hog. It doesn't take up too much space, but then it's super easy to travel with because you just put it all in there, roll it back up, and then it's done. When you want to play it again, boom, roll it out, and you get to play it again. It's a simple, quick card game. It's outstanding.
Next up is Paris and Cite Lumiere, which is a 2-player game that plays in the box for the most part. There'll be a couple cards around and some tiles, but everything is going to be being played into the box. It's a 2-player game that's kind of broken up into 2 halves. So it's good for traveling because it doesn't take up too much space. And in the first half, you are going to be placing out tiles into the grid, which makes up kind of this city. And the tiles are going to show your color, your opponent's color, and possibly purple, which can be used by either player. And you're going to be hopefully setting up a situation where you have large areas of the board space that are your color. Because in that first half of the game, you're also going to be drafting out these tiles, which are buildings, and they are different polyomino shapes. And then in the second half of the game, you're going to be placing those shapes ideally into the board on the areas of your cobblestone colors. And you want them to be next to areas with light, because the idea is that the light is going to show the architecture and people can stand around and marvel at it. So you are trying to kind of balance the first half in drafting and building out. The second half, you are going to be placing those tiles and making use of these kind of post cards that have different abilities and stuff like that. It's just a really fun kind of contained, tight game. I like that it's set in Paris. So if you're like us on the American side, it kind of makes me feel like I'm traveling anyway. Maybe you can go play it in Paris. There's just kind of like a lot of cool stuff, and it's a pretty small box, so it can fit into a bag.
Number 6 kind of should be number 1, and this is going to be cribbage. We decided not for number 1 because like a deck of cards is like the ultimate travel thing, right? Because you can play thousands of games with a deck of cards, but cribbage is our favorite kind of like classic card game. Really, really love cribbage, and cribbage is really great because you only need a deck of cards, and then you need a cribbage board, and cribbage boards can be like this cribbage board here, which is like a whole it's this whole piece of art. We have a whole bunch of cribbage boards around the studio because our grandfather used to make cribbage boards, and many of them are very large. You can make them very big, but there's tons of little travel cribbage boards because all you need is like the little holes that you peg through, and that's really all you need. You could also just like score these on your phone. You wouldn't even necessarily need a cribbage board, and in that case, you only need a deck of cards. But this is a game where you're given a hand of cards. You're going to have to get rid of some of them. Those are going to go to the dealer's crib. And then you're going to be playing cards back and forth, and you're basically trying to get to 15, you're trying to get to pairs, you're trying to get to 31. All those things will give you points. You're trying to make runs of cards. And then once both players have played both their cards, you're going to score your hands. Again, you score for making 15, so a 7 and an 8 is 15. That gives you 2 points, or 15-2. But if you have 7, 7, 8, you have one of the 7s and an 8, that's 15-2. The other 7 and an 8, that's 15-4. And then the pair of 7s is 2 more points for a pair of 6. And so you're scoring things, trying to make runs, trying to make big hands, and then trying to get to 121, is that what it is? 120, somewhere there? Points before your opponent. Cribbage is a classic card game. We played with our grandparents. I can't wait to play it with Mike's daughter. We're going to keep passing on because I love, love, love cribbage. It's the perfect travel game.
Next up is going to be Beer and Bread. This is a chunkier kind of 2-player game, which is going to be using resource management and some card drafting in kind of 2 different ways as you are rival towns across a creek, across a river, and you're kind of having these friendly competitions, seeing who can brew the best beer, bake the best bread, and that is very difficult to say correctly. And so you are going to be making use of these cards. Now, these cards are going to be in the odd number rounds getting passed back and forth in kind of traditional card drafting style. You choose one, pass the hand. And the second half, you're going to have a set of cards and a couple of other ones as well. And each card is useful in 3 different ways. You have to make a choice of how you want to use this card. Along the top of cards are going to be some resources. If I use that card to produce those resources, I will generate everything that's showing on that card and possibly some stuff that I've tried to produce before. You have limited storage though, so you might inadvertently be offering up resources to your opponent, which is not necessarily great. The middle of the card shows a recipe for either beer or bread, and you can turn in resources to make those things. And then the bottom one will be, the bottom of a card will be some sort of end game scoring, some sort of in-game benefit, and you are going to be using these things to also clear out your bakery and your brewery so you can make more beer and bread. There's just a lot of fun, interesting choices to be made because every card is useful in multiple ways. So I have to make really tough decisions. I'm going to make this card for my upgrades, which means I cannot brew this beer, and that would be really useful. And on top of all that, at the end of the game, you only score your lowest score between your beer and your bread. So you have to have a balanced approach as well. So it just creates a lot of interesting kind of brain burn moments. It's a really great kind of heads up 2-player experience.
Number 4 is, at this point, any of the 3 boops. I say at this point because I got a hunch there's gonna be more of them, and honestly, I'm down. I freaking love all the different boops. Boop is great. Boop is a 2-player abstract game that really could be any theme, but they decided to make the theme cute cats, which I think is a very good marketing decision, considering it sold very well. I think it was a very good marketing decision. And at this point, there's Boop, and then there's Boop the Halls. But ultimately, they kind of have the same gameplay with some extra stuff in there, where basically you have kittens. You're going to be placing kittens out on the board. If you place it next to another kitten, it is going to boop those kittens because they're jumping on the bed, and they're going to move them out. What you're trying to do is get a line of your kittens, because if you do, you take them off the board, you turn them into cats. Cats are nice because cats can boop anything, but kittens can't boop cats. And what you're trying to do is get 3 cats in a line. That's how you win the game. It's just a tough, thinky little abstract game with very cute pieces and very cute theme. But it's literally just on the box. You turn the box over, you put the little bedspread looking thing on it, and you play on top of that. That's fine, even for Boop or Boop the Halls. Boop the Halls is kind of a 3D board, but it's still just the size of the box. So these are super nice because you can play this on a teeny tiny little table because you just need a place to put your little cats and kittens on the side, and then you have the box, and then that's it. It's a great little abstract game that you can travel with super easily.
Our next up is King of 12. This is a really fun, kind of party adjacent game where you are going to be playing with a set of character cards, and every player will have the same cards, the same characters that all have the same abilities, and you're gonna be rolling a 12-sided die. And for the most part, you are going to be trying to have the highest value at the end of every turn. Now, the cards you play are going to mitigate the value. Sometimes it might be a virtual +7 to your die. So if I rolled a 7 and I have a virtual 7, I now have 14. Other things will actually physically make you roll or change the sides of your dice. There are times where you want to have the lowest value. And so everyone has a card. Everyone has this card that's going to flip kind of the goal, and everyone's trying to wonder when things are going to get played. And that's really where this game becomes so fun, because if you ever have a time where 2 or more people play the same card or have the same value or anything of that nature, if they ever match in any way, they cancel each other out completely. So you are very much trying to pick your spots, make sure you play a card to give the maximum benefit for you, and hopefully at a time that no one else has the same clever idea that you do, so you don't then end up negating your ability to score points. And it's a very kind of quick round. It just creates these really fun moments where you're like, I know what you're doing, man. I can see what you're doing. You're not more clever than me, except for probably they are as clever as you, and you end up doing the same thing, and then you kind of blow it.
Number 2 is going to be the Fellowship of the Ring, the trick-taking game. Realistically, this could be any trick-taking game, and really any like small box card game can fall into here. But we're going to talk about the Lord of the Rings one because it is our current favorite, because we love Lord of the Rings. Obviously. We love Lord. If you've watched any of our top 10s, there's always something Lord of the Rings in the background. We've got tons of it. But nonetheless, love Lord of the Rings. Oh, here's another cribbage board. Yeah, I knew there was one on this shelf somewhere. Nonetheless, Lord of the Rings, A Fellowship of the Ring, Lord of the Rings trick-taking game is really, really fun. This is a trick-taking game, kind of like The Crew in the sense where it's cooperative. You're kind of be going through different missions. In this case, you're going through stories, and you're going through the story, in this case, of the Fellowship of the Ring. And you're basically going chapter by chapter. You're starting off with a long expected party, and then you're going to go through, you go shortcut to mushrooms, you're eventually going to go to Rivendell, you're going to go to Moria and things like that. And every single scenario, you're going to have different goals, and you're going to have different characters that you can choose from. Some of the characters are mandatory, like, Frodo, especially like later on, if you're doing something with Frodo and Sam, you're going to have to choose Frodo and Sam because they're part in the story. But other times, especially when you have kind of like the whole fellowship, you can kind of switch some people in and out, which I think is really cool. And all of those characters are going to have different goals that you need to do. So like, I need to take these cards, you need to take that, you need to do this. Okay, cool. Pippin in the first scenario needs to win equal to or the least amount of tricks. So they need to lose the most, all that kind of stuff. And so you're just playing out trick taking, but you're playing through the Lord of the Rings. I love this game. It's super, super fun because every single chapter you're doing different stuff, you have different goals, you have different characters, and it changes it each time. Even just one scenario would be really fun to play over and over and over again, but the fact that they change as you go through and those changes make sense for what's happening in the story, it's like an absolute barn burner for us. It's like someone tailor-made a game for us. We love trick-taking games. We are obsessed with Lord of the Rings. The art is so cool. It's so fun, but it's just a trick-taking game. It's got a pretty small box, so it's very easy to travel with because it's more or less just a couple decks of cards, and you can throw it in a backpack, throw it in a purse like that. No problem at all, and you can kind of play it anywhere. It's great.
Number 1 is Village Rails. I love it so much. It's a game that's in a box like this big. It's a very small box, which is already a flex. And you are going to be building out a network of railways. These cards that are kind of these little half-size mini cards. You're going to be putting a 3x4 grid together of these cards. They're going to make different railways and stuff. And you are going to have different icons and types of land and stuff that are going to be along these rails. And you are trying to score each rail as valuably as possible. So you might have some goals you put onto a rail, which gives you benefits if you have farms or things like that. Other icons are going to be endgame scoring and stuff. And for us, it's the perfect kind of travel game because it comes in a small box, so it's easy to pack. It's only a 3x4 grid that has like little borders around it, so it literally can't expand beyond a certain space. And it creates a really chunky game experience in just 12 turns because there's a lot of things to consider. Where do I put these rail cards? Anytime a rail card would reach the end, the rail that you've created reaches the end of your kind of natural 3x4 border, you score your rail at that time. So you're trying to time up when things score so you can make sure you get as many of the icons that you need in place prior to it scoring, and then it's done. There's also, you have villagers that you can play and they kind of make their demands to get money because it's going to be nice to have some cash on hand to be able to have more choice of what cards you draft. There's really a lot of things to consider. It's a game that doesn't take too long. It doesn't take up hardly any space at all, but it gives you a really big game feel. That's all the 10 games we like to take with us traveling. Yeah. We'd love to know from you, though. What are games that you travel with usually or would like to take with you on a trip, a road trip, or whatever it might be? Let's get a nice long list of recommendations so the people can come reference this when possibly planning for their travel plans.
Totally, yeah. So let us know down in the comments below what those will be. And until next time, we'll see you later.
Bye.